In the last video, I wanted to show you that although we are free as Christians, we also ought to feel a deep sense of responsibility for one another. Christ loved us and gave himself for us, and his example should provoke us to love one another as the Holy Spirit leads us. But loving one another means not using them for our own physical desires, not deceiving them and making them think that we love them when all we want is the physical pleasure of sex with them. It also means taking the time to gain insight about ourselves so that we begin to understand the powerful pull that sexual desire can have and how it can blind us so that we, even as followers of Christ, can do terrible things to satisfy it. Lust isn't something that only affects gay people or straight people. Lust affects everyone. Nor is sex the only thing that people lust after. However, in this generation in the Western world, sexual lust has special relevance. When you go out into the world, you don't need to go very far before you see the enormous human cost of sexual lust. You can see it in broken families, and you can see it in broken hearts, scarred for life by people who can't seem to be able to control their lust. Yet sadly, even with all this human cost, no one seems to want to recognize the harm that can be done through lust, and instead the media seems to want to fuel it with books and images. If you read the New Testament of the Bible, you will often see sexual lust placed in the same sort of category as greed. When you think about that a little more deeply, you can begin to understand the parallel. Food is necessary for life, and the pleasure of eating food is perfectly natural and legitimate. But when people give themselves over completely to that pleasure, so that it becomes an obsession, to the point where they are blind to any damage that they are doing to themselves and others, that legitimate desire for food becomes a form of uncontrollable lust. Did you know that when we have sex or eat food, our bodies release chemicals called endorphins, which have a similar effect on our brains as the opiates that intravenous drug users inject into their bodies? And in a similar way that intravenous drug users become addicted to the high that they get from drugs, it is also possible for us to develop a kind of obsession with the high that we get out of sex. When we consider this fact, then what Paul wrote to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 6 verse 12 about sex now makes a little more sense. As Christians, we shouldn't be allowing ourselves to create a monster of sexual lust within, one that in time we won't be able to control. We can't allow ourselves to reach a stage when no one person will ever be enough sexually, and when we could end up being unfaithful to people that we say that we love to satisfy our desires which are out of control. But how do we prevent a legitimate desire for sex to get out of control? I think that Jesus gave us part of the answer in Luke chapter 11 verse 34. He said, "Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are good, your whole body is also full of light. But when they are bad, your body also is full of darkness. See to it that the light within you is not darkness. Therefore, if your whole body is full of light, and no part of it is dark, it will be completely lighted, as when the light of a lamp shines on you." There is no doubt that in terms of sexual lust, there is nothing more important than what we allow our eyes to see. Is this not usually where lust begins and where also we feed it? In this world of modern media, there is the potential to gain access to a host of different images. But what sort of images should we as Christians be looking at? Are we feeding lust with our eyes? Are we creating a monster within us by what we look at? Perhaps this is really where the war against lust can actually be won, rather than down the line when lust overpowers us. Jesus said once in direct relation to sexual lust in Matthew chapter 5 verse 29. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. I don't think that Jesus meant that these words should be taken literally, but the spirit of what he is saying is clear. This is not a game, and our actions in relation to lust can have severe consequences. We need to take drastic measures to protect ourselves. I'm not going to tell anyone exactly what those measures ought to be, because everyone's life is different and the weaknesses that they face are different. However, we do need to be smart about what we do, even if that means finding ways of locking out the kind of media that would harm us, so that it's beyond our reach. So what should we be looking at? What should we be thinking about? I love what the Apostle Paul wrote in Philippians. He said, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." We do have a choice in our lives in relation to sexual sin. We can walk in step with the Holy Spirit, bearing the fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Or we can choose to indulge these bodies of ours to the extent that lust gains the upper hand. And the choice that we make will be what sets us apart as followers of Christ.